What's up, you guys? It's great.
Okay, so like I said, history repeating itself is going to be the theme for today. I clicked through this video and I was like, wow, that is the dumbest argument that I've ever heard for BRICS succeeding.
Is that the guy? Oh, I know this guy. I saw him.
It's official. China and Brazil have.
Huh?
I saw him in a boxing match.
Oh, did he do Creator Clash?
Yes, he was in Creator Clash.
Yeah.
But that's I think the first one. But that's the funny thing, right? Like, have you seen those types of economics channel that do like, okay, like every week is a different person is fucking doomed and the world's ending? Like,
yeah, that's this guy's channel. This guy's channel.
Funny. I love these channels. Like every year is the same shit.
Dude, this is great. He's got his dollar out to like present it too.
Have just struck a deal to ditch the U.S. dollar. Whoops. Okay, before everyone freaks out, don't worry, it's a fake bill for dramatic effect, but the point still remains. The world's second largest economy is slowly cutting off ties with the United States, and this, not surprisingly, is the first to go. So today let's discuss exactly what's happening, why this is happening, what this realistically means for all of you watching, and whether or not this is a topic to be concerned about, because I have to say, this is something to be taken extremely seriously. After all, the billionaire Ray Dalio has previously described the impending downfall of every major economy as we know it, how these cycles typically happen on a regular basis, and how we can best prepare for what's to come based off predictable events that happen about once every 100 years. Although before we start, I have to warn...
Fucking economists! People, they want to find a fucking history model. You sons of bitches, stick to your shit. Oh my god. Fuck. How many times do I have to talk to dumbass economics majors? How many times? How many times do I have to... Yeah, dude, if I got in there, I could model that shit. No, motherfucker! You can't model that shit. No such thing. You don't even know a third... You don't even know, like, a tenth of the things you need to know. Like, you don't know shit!
He did do a follow-up where he might be talking about economics instead of patterns.
You, the like button is also in danger of not being smashed for the YouTube algorithm.
I
So
swear
if you
to
wouldn't
God,
mind hitting the like button or subscribing, it does help out tremendously. So thank you guys so much. And now with that said, let's begin. All right, so as a quick 60-second recap to bring you up to speed about what's going on, as of now and for the last 80 years, the US dollar has been the most powerful currency in the world because it's known as what's called a reserve currency. This refers to a currency that's accepted throughout the entire world. And since 1945, the US dollar has taken that place because of its safety, resiliency, and stability. Like when the system was first adopted, it was used as a way to keep the price of investments, exchange rates, and commodities like gold and oil stable, knowing that no matter which currency you held, its value was pegged to that of the US dollar. See, when you have dozens of countries all trading goods and services with each other, it helps to have one universal currency accepted around the world with a predictable value to conduct those transactions in. Otherwise, you run the risk of getting paid in a currency that might be difficult to exchange, or maybe its value has fallen by the time you're able to convert it back to your native currency. So think of this kind of like a global transfer of value through the US dollar that everyone has agreed to be safe. And of course, the United States benefits from this as well, because more countries use the US dollar, more countries hold onto those dollars, and as a result, we have greater buying power. But the US dollar is apparently at risk of losing that reserve currency status. And to understand why, look no further than Ray Dalio's changing world order. See, as he explains, throughout history, there's a constantly changing world order between the leading economy and the rising economy. And over time, one will fail to make way for something new. For example, prior to 1945, the reserve currency was held by the British pound, which lasted for 105 years following the French Revolution, followed by the Netherlands, followed by Spain and Portugal and Venetian gold, and so on, with the understanding that reserve currencies have...
Problem here. Like, go back to this chart. It says followed by, but the lines tend to intersect and go over one another at many, many points. Like,
well, I think so. Did he say the top? Maybe it's the top one. It's like this one, then this one, then this one, then this one.
Okay, maybe I guess, but like, the thing is, like, he talked even about like inflation and reserve currencies.
Also,
yeah, I wonder.
Also, isn't this just silver?
What?
The Chinese, when the Chinese economy, when they're saying that the Chinese dollar was dominant here, the Chinese would only take silver for transactions. So
1500.
everyone normalized and regulated and started trading in silver.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
that's not it's not a currency.
It's fine. It's.
You mean to tell me that they're using a graph
reserve
that
currencies have
isn't
never
actually
lasted
relevant?
forever?
Well, the thing is like since it's like you're talking about a world, like the thing is like these graphs and patterns and like it's like chaos theory or whatever, something like that. But it's like, bro, how long has like things like the UN and capitalism and like liberalism existed? Like, like there was also like slave economies as well.
Yeah.
Like
Our modern understanding of economies, like it doesn't. You can't map it back to the fucking.
Yeah, like the modern economy, like people will be like, the Romans had coins. Who the fuck cares? Like,
And about every 100 years, they change in a transition that lasts between 10 and 20 years. So what causes this, you might ask? Well, Ray Dalio points out that this could be summarized into 3 categories: the rise, the top, and the decline.
Okay.
During the rise, after every new reserve currency, there's a period of peace and prosperity as people bet and borrow on that system continuing. This is typically marked with strong education.
Okay, the rise and fall and decline, and yet somehow all the lines below the top one keep fluctuating. So are there rise, fall, decline, rise, fall, decline, rise, fall? Like, how does this work? Like, is this an overarching narrative? Does, like, once the rise ends and the fall comes, is that the end?
You know what this is starting to sound like? So all I see on the screen right now is strong education. I'm telling you, this is going to be like bad times, strong men type shit. That's what this is going to be.
Are you like I bet, right? This is just like a very like long and idiotic way to say that the most powerful economies and richest countries in the world tend to compete historically for like the top position. Like, wow, you fucking enlightened us now. Like, are you serious?
I think it's going to be more fashy shit, like how we're complacent and we're becoming queers. And
here's the funny thing: like he maps it back to the 1500s to find enough countries to like be occupying that top position. I wonder when our time would come. I wonder when Greece will be the top dog. Like it must happen eventually. Like all of them rise.
It's already
like,
happened.
Fall eventually.
It's like
we were top dog back in antiquity.
The original.
You know how many people have lost their houses in Vegas because they assured themselves it's got to hit eventually?
Critical thinking, character building, and work ethic that allows for innovation, new technologies,
strong character,
and other resources for a continual rise in productivity. However, in order to finance that continual rise in productivity, there has to be a system in place for borrowing and allowing people from around the world to convert their currency into investments that share in the success of making that happen. In fact, Ray Dalio points out that all the successful reserve currencies followed the exact same path, leading to, of course, the top. At the peak, the general consensus is that while people earn more, their time becomes more valuable relative to other countries who would be willing to do the same work for less. On top of that, other countries have the ability to take the blueprints of the latest innovation and then copy that for a fraction of the cost, reducing the leading power's competitiveness. The tipping point, though, comes when people lose faith in the...
This is all theory crafting, right? When like any competent academic could go over the points and explain them in a completely different way, right? Like this is just like you're just crafting a theory. This isn't matter of fact, Stepan. Like that's the problem with like the theoretical sciences, right? The thing is you make a theory and then you try to demonstrate it empirically sometimes. Sometimes it's impossible to do that, so you're just creating a theory. Like you're just creating frameworks of understanding and explaining the world. But when you do shit like this, you make us look bad. Stop it.
The reserve currency, they refused to buy it and would rather sell than reinvest the profits, leading to, of course, the decline. Ray Dalio explains that during an economic downturn, if a country cannot sustain its own debts, it has to choose between defaulting and printing more money. And they're always going to choose printing more money. That devalues the currency, it raises inflation, and since
always. Always, motherfucker. No, you know what bothers me is that like it's clear that like people who don't know enough about like history, economics, or international relations or anything like that, you can bamboozle them with a fancy sounding theory so easily. Oh my god! Well, an academic would be like, okay, cool story, bro. Like, but what's your proof?
And like the right wing, it's like that's one of their like mimetic triggers is printing money bad.
Or you could say like whatever, like great man theory. Like you could put this theory forward. Okay, you've just put the theory forward. Like Graham here is like he's just like showing another guy's theory as if it's like the invention of water. Like, dude, okay, it's just a theory that.
So what he's doing is literally explaining another video that you can find on YouTube. That's literally what he's doing. He watched a video and he's explaining that video.
The 1990s, the central bank has already stepped in 3 times to finance an industry collapse. Once in the dot-com bubble, once during the mortgage crisis, and again during the COVID shutdown. Historically, it's said that when a government has trouble funding itself during bad economic conditions or rising inflation, the rich move their assets to places, investments, and currencies that they feel
China
safest
had
in,
low
and giving way
COVID
for
deaths
other.
and didn't have any money issues or anything like that. I bet you this guy believes that.
He's talking about capital flight. Okay, capital flights to China, I guess, but I don't think that's exactly what's happening. If I'm not mistaken, like part of the reason why the Chinese economy grew so much is because it was doing the manufacturing and like on behalf of like Western companies, and most of those benefits went to Western pockets. They didn't go to Chinese pockets.
Mm-hmm.
Like.
Yeah.
It's
well,
like
that's what an export currency does.
Other nations to eventually take the spot as the reserve currency. Surprisingly, he explains that these events have repeated themselves consistently since the Roman Empire. And even though no 2 changes have been the exact same, there is a similar blueprint that we could look at today to determine what might happen in the future. Now, in this case, the value of our dollar is indeed weakening. See, the dollar isn't just valued at a dollar, even though technically...
You mean inflation exists?
Wow, incredible. You mean that I could buy like a beer with like 3 cents back in 1846 and now I can't? What?
And also, if you don't have inflation, people just hold on to the dollars and not spend them.
Yeah.
Like that's the whole reason of printing money and making inflation is so people spend dollars so they don't hold on to them.
Yeah, that's
so
if your dollars were an asset that kept appreciating in value, like you wouldn't get rid of it.
Yeah, that's the whole thing behind, like, this guy is probably talking about why crypto is great. And it's like, it's not a thing, bro. You don't, it's like, why would you have something that it's like relies on holding? No.
Like, I don't know what his ideas about inflation are, because like this guy does like a ton of like investment and economics video. He has to know that inflation is needed and it's important. If we're talking like
yeah, but as far as the right wing is concerned, inflation bad, printing dollar bad.
A dollar is always equal to a dollar. Really, though, it's tracked against 3 different metrics. The first is the exchange rate to other currencies, the second is the demand for 10-year treasury notes, and the third is what's known as foreign currency reserves, which is a really fancy way of saying how many US dollars are held by other countries. Now, when it comes to the exchange rate to other currencies, it is true that the value of the US dollar has been gradually weakening since 2020. However, the US dollar is more recently higher than it's been throughout the last 20 years, despite the recent drop. Second, as far as the demand for 10-year treasury notes goes, this is essentially just a 10-year loan to the government. And for people who want a safe place to store their money, they'll essentially buy these and then get a guaranteed return on their capital. In terms of our own currency, though, the value of the US dollar has been actually going up alongside with interest rates, meaning the higher the rates go, the more demand there is to buy those higher yielding bonds, which is good for the US dollar. And third, in terms of foreign currency reserves, this is where things get slightly less optimistic, because as you could see, the US dollar has been steadily declining as other currencies are beginning to take its place. And as CNBC reports, we're now at the lowest level that we've seen in 25 years. This, of course, brings us to what's happening right now. On March 29th, it was announced that China and Brazil struck a deal to trade in their own currencies, ditching the US dollar as an intermediary. This would essentially enable them to trade directly with each other without having to buy US dollars in the process. And they currently transact around $150 billion every single year that's no longer going through the US. But keep in mind that this is not the first time that something like this has happened. China's been slowly shifting away from the US dollar since 2010. Russia and India both ditched the US dollar a year ago, and Saudi Arabia recently said that it was open to the idea of trading the Chinese yuan. Not to mention, China, Russia, Brazil, India, and South Africa have already joined forces to transact in their own reserve currency that's separate from our dollars, referred to as BRICS. So this isn't exactly something that came out of nowhere.
What's the reserve currency of BRICS? There isn't one, is there?
It's the Chinese
They're trying
dollar.
to make it the Chinese.
It's the Chinese dollar right now. An export currency. An export currency that they can control the value of. You know? Like if the US economy really and we really got fucked, right? We still have the gold reserves. We have more gold than anyone else on Earth. So if the total global economy collapsed, we still have all the gold. And that's why you see Wagner so obsessed with gold and stuff. Because they're trying to get like every edge that they can in these markets. So they think that if they can get edges in gold and they can get edges in reserve currency, somehow this weakens the US. You know, but like I didn't hear America crying when the euro was created.
But it could have a significant effect. In fact, as Grit Capital points out on Twitter, China's trading volume skyrocketed upon the Russia-Ukraine war, with sanctions allowing them to gain an even stronger foothold on international trade. But is this actually something to worry about?
No.
And could the US be heading towards a time where it's no longer the reserve currency? Well, as of now,
Maybe,
even though the
but not-
future of the
not
US
from
dollar
this.
looks uncertain, there's currently nothing close to being able to take its place. Now, of course, it's certainly not the most confidence-inspiring to hear that China's economy is posed to outpace the US by 2030, or that BRICS economies are some of the
They've been
fastest
saying
growing
that
nations
for
in the world.
20
But the
years.
US dollar still makes up the vast majority of global transactions, and its dominance is not going anywhere anytime soon. Frankly, a lot would need to happen first if there were to be a new reserve currency, and notwithstanding a massive black swan event that undermines the United States' role in worldwide trade, it might not happen, or it might not be able to take place in a way that we could reasonably predict. Of course, this doesn't mean that there's not any concern at all, with even Elon Musk tweeting that this is a serious issue.
Even
Well, that
Elon
proves
Being
Musk!
too heavy-handed,
That
making
proves
countries
it, Dad.
Holy
That proves it.
Shit, dude!
That proves it.
Even Elon Musk tweeted it. Wow. Now I'm really concerned.
on against the dollar, combined with excess government spending, which forces other countries to absorb a significant part of our inflation. With that, it's no wonder why Barron's recently reported that the U.S. stimulus following the financial crisis started a currency war, cheapening the greenback to boost America's economy. Because there is the very real danger that other countries will want to compete. Even Saudi Arabia entered a new trade agreement, and ultimately that's going to put a lot more pressure on the United States. But at the end of the day, the reality is the US dollar is being traded less, there is more competition between countries.
Yeah, let's just look
And
at the
that's
graph.
not going away anytime
That is-
soon. However,
The
I
euro
personally
is more
believe that
likely
the
to
US
take
dollar
over
as a
than the
reserve
yuan
currency
ever
is
will
not
be.
going anywhere. It's still the #1 spot by far, and most of the headlines that you see simply want clicks. I think to spend your time worrying
Okay,
about
buddy.
this is going to be incredibly
Like you, for
unproductive,
example.
especially when there are way more imminent topics that should be discussed a lot more,
Are you
like
just
in
telling us
regards
you
to
wasted
raising the
our
debt
time?
ceiling, which
Yeah,
is likely
why
going to
do
take a
we watch
significant
this?
toll on the markets if both sides
And-
can't come to an agreement. That's why I tend to believe that it's always a good idea to understand what's going on and why this is happening, but instead
10
focus your time on what you can control, like whether or not you're diversified, whether or not you save enough money, whether or not you have a consistent income,
Invest in
and whether or not
crypto.
you invest on a regular basis.
Is his
That's why
video
I
10
think
minutes?
focusing on those will make you so much more money
Yes, it's
than
10 minutes and
Here
9
comes an ad.
seconds.
Here comes
thinking
an
about
ad.
the possibility that maybe one day the US is not going to be the world's reserve currency at some point, possibly in our lifetime. Plus, by focusing on what you can control, you're going to be in a much better position to subscribe if you haven't done that already, because
He could have made this video
Dislike
in
the video. Dislike it right
2
now.
minutes. 2 minutes he could have made it. He could have made
Oh
it.
yeah. Well, I said that the
Hey,
other.
so people are worried about China and like a global reserve currency changing. Is that the case? Well, probably not.
Well,
Not right
he
now, at
made
least.
a follow
Maybe
up
in the
because
future.
you were so mad about it.
Is the
Fucking
United
prick.
States dollar under threat?
We should prepare to lose our position as holder of the world's reserve currency. That is happening in slow motion. It's unmistakable.
I think it's
How slow? How slow is that
in
motion?
the long term.
20 years so far.
What's up, you guys? It's Graham here. So apparently, there could soon be a new replacement for the US dollar. That's right, several nations have now teamed up to reduce their dependence on the United States. They've all begun buying gold at the highest level since 1950, and the result could be an Asian monetary fund that begins to take a financial toll on the value of your money. So given all of the misinformation surrounding some of these claims, I thought it would be a good idea to break down exactly what's going on, the new changes that are about to take place, and whether or not this is realistically going to have an impact on all of you watching. Because even though there
So is it going to end with him saying, "All right, so this is not going to matter at all. Goodbye."
is a
So,
lot
hey,
to
this is
cover,
just-
it's probably
Just
not what
I'm
you're expecting.
thinking.
Although
It's fine though. Don't worry too much. Just invest.
The other one was funny because he
Diversify your
seriously
holdings.
just stole another guy's video. Like, he literally watched another guy's video and explained it.
really quick, before we start, I just want to say a huge thank you for similar economic
Thank you.
values and a strong economy. This includes the United States, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, and the United Kingdom. The purpose of this group was to form a strong economic alliance of the world's leading nations who meet every single year to discuss and resolve economic problems, including looming financial crises, commodity shortages, and global economic growth. Basically, just think of this like a tight-knit circle of the world's leading superpowers who have all joined together to one day gain interstellar dominance. Okay, maybe not that far, but they do meet to resolve trade issues, maintain financial stability, and encourage political peace. However, in 1999, it was said that the G7 didn't properly represent the entire worldwide economy, especially emerging markets. So a G20 group was born to provide an even larger forum for the global good. Except not everyone was happy. See, in a way, the G7 overlooked some of the fastest growing markets, which were quickly catching up in terms of dominance. So in 2001, the term BRICS was coined to represent Brazil, Russia, India, China, and later South Africa, who were believed to dominate the global economy by 2050. After all, those countries encompass over 25% of the world's land coverage and 40% of the entire world's population, with a total GDP of almost $25 trillion. Now, even though that term was originally coined by Goldman Sachs to represent their belief.
Most
Here's
of
the
which
thing:
is China.
does population matter? Like, if you have a high population and you want to use your population, you would have to do it in a manufacturing way. You can't like have all those people in your like. Not everyone in China can go like create a business. You know?
Yeah, it's weird. Like having big population. Sure, you have like a very big labor pool, but more important is like, okay, how is your population aging? What's your population growth? Like stuff like that. Because like, but yeah, I mean, being very powerful economically or having big sway in the globally, yeah, having a big population does help in doing that. But okay, so what's like, I don't know.
That
You-
emerging markets would be a profitable.
Yeah.
no, I was thinking that like the you could make like post-colonial arguments about around this is like you know, like the global community meme is like the global community condemns XYZ, but like when we're talking about the global community, we're just like kind of talking about the West.
Mhm.
But those aren't like you know, like, and then you say, okay, like, but like the global population actually doesn't care that much. But those aren't like about economics. Those aren't discussions about economics. Those are discussions about like
First
actually,
world problems and shit.
yeah, grievance. It's their discussions about like racism, assumed dominant positions, stuff that like probably don't concern like the vast majority of people. So, you know, like
investment that term stuck. And in 2009, BRICS began hosting its annual summit for a greater voice and representation throughout global finance, which brings us to today. It's now reported that BRICS nations have overtaken the G7 in terms of purchasing power GDP, which basically means even though the US brings in more dollars, BRICS nations produces more relative to what you could buy. On top of that, BRICS is also expanding and might soon include the likes of Argentina, Egypt, Iran, Indonesia, Bangladesh, and the United Emirates, which, if accepted, would create an entity with a GDP 30% larger than the United States, over 50% of the global population, and in control of 60% of the global gas reserves. Obviously, a group of that magnitude would have a lot of influence and leverage in terms of global finance, and one of those initiatives could very well be replacing the dollar. That's because after China and Brazil entered into a trade agreement to ditch the US dollar, a new report highlighted that BRICS nations are in the process of creating a new medium for payments established on a strategy that does not defend the dollar or euro. Even though the details are sparse, it's said that the new currency would be secured by gold and other commodities.
Like I said. Also, there's
The Americans have the gold.
This is also one of the conspiracies about Uganda, that like basically that Wagner is backing the Janjaweed because they want the gold and the uranium. It's like, yeah, I mean, they're going to get a stake in the gold and uranium, but Russia's already their main trading partner. They have all the access to the gold and uranium that they could, like, what more could Russia gain? Like, they're already, like, it doesn't matter who wins the little civil conflict, Russia still wins. It's so stupid.
Such as rare earth elements, and the new form of currency would be presented at the BRICS summit this year, which takes place between August 22nd to 24th. This also comes just days after South Africa sent officials to Russia for new global order talks. All of this is simply referred to as de-dollarization, which in simple terms suggests replacing the US dollar as the world's reserve currency, or at least reducing its dominance to promote more competition. In addition to that, there's also been talks and concerns over the US dollar being weaponized through sanctions against other countries. And if a new currency would exist, that could be another option for transacting outside of the United States. Now, the proponents of this argue that this process would reduce other countries' dependence on the US dollar and the US economy, which could help mitigate the impact of economic...
And bring about the multipolar world order.
Yeah. Oh, bro. We just did Richie Medhurst, and it was basically about this. And like, it was so cringe. He was so cringe and like so happy. And he's like, at one point he goes, "Yeah, there's Xi Jinping's."
Xi Jinping's.
Economic and political changes in the US on their own economies. But others believe that this is simply a way for countries to avoid sanctions, and that full dollarization could help countries achieve lower inflation, economic stability, and growth.
Exactly.
Although even with all that said, one thing is very clear. The dominance of the US dollar has been steadily declining for more than 20 years, with most of that going to China or smaller countries that play a more limited role as a reserve currency. So what's happened? Well, one report found that there were three main reasons. First, there's a lot more liquidity in the markets today than there was in the past. See, previously, growing economies didn't have access to electronic trading and had to resort to US dollars to settle transactions. But now, falling transaction costs give them the opportunity to use other currencies with the push of a button, reducing their dependence on the US dollar. Second, countries are already holding on to a high amount of dollars as reserves, giving them the option to accumulate other currencies at a higher rate. For example, it was found that throughout 55 emerging markets, 30 of them had excess reserves as of 2017, and those reserves were exceeded by an average of 58%. And third, the Russia-Ukraine war forced alternative payment methods between countries that wanted to do business with each other, like Russia invoicing in rubles, Saudi Arabia paying in renminbi, and China trading with their yuan. This article then goes on to say that the overall conclusion is that the weaponization of the dollar serves to increase incentives towards financial fragmentation. Or I guess more simply put, if you put limitations on who can transact with the dollar, the most likely outcome is that other countries will try to find a way around it. And economically, that leads to alternatives that might not be in our best interest. What could that be, you ask? Well, apparently, they've been buying gold. On a broad scale, central banks have been buying up the precious metal at the fastest pace since 1950, with China making another purchase of 30 tons back in December, not including what we don't already know of. In addition to that, Turkey was the biggest buyer of gold during the last quarter of 2020.
A NATO member. but they're going to join. They're one of the people on the list. They're one of the people that their names on the list to join the BRICS. That's why they're there, because they're going to upset. They're going to overthrow the U.S. because they're going to join the BRICS.
2022, followed by Uzbekistan and India. Because of that, it's said that these large gold purchases could be symbolic of the departure from the US dollar, especially now that reserves have fallen from 70% in 2000 down to 60% today. It's also said to be an attempt to diversify holdings outside of the United States within an asset that typically holds in value to inflation. Although the downside is that the more research I try to do on this, the more I go down a rabbit hole of getting sucked into a sales funnel that tries to sell you on gold bullion. But objectively, it does seem like a large amount of gold was purchased at the end of 2022, with prices almost reaching their previous all-time high. Now, whether or not gold is actually a valid hedge.
Oh no, we're getting to the point where he says that, hey, this may not matter at all. I feel it
inflation
coming.
Is up for debate, especially since there are decades in a row where it's underperformed. But the fact remains, central banks are buying it as a store of value, and perhaps that'll reduce reliance on the US dollar. At least a bit. This could also be why a U.S. congresswoman wants to go back to the gold standard where every dollar is backed by an equivalent amount of gold. Although I gotta say,
yeah, dude, that's why she wants to do that. That's what gave her the idea. You nailed it. Yep, totally.
A U.S. congresswoman?
Not just a U.S. congresswoman, the most insane U.S. congresswoman. Like, the one who believes that there's Jewish space lasers causing the wildfires. Like, holy shit.
Oh, just people throwing around like the idea, you know?
just literally a woman who had her human brain replaced with a dog's brain. It's just that lady.
Like when you're so purposefully vague about who is talking about a certain thing, then you know you're bullshitting. Like, okay, then like, oh, people are talking about this. Really? Who's talking about this? Are they credible? Should we listen? So when somebody says, oh, did you notice like XYZ US Congress member said like this thing or that thing? It's like, okay, who cares? They're fucking idiots, most of them. Like, what do you, like, do you think they have some special insight or actually know what they're talking about?
I think he had to get the video to 10 minutes is what happened.
I could start making a video about creationism and saying creationism is gaining traction in the U.S. XYZ Congress members talked about how
she probably is the one that you would use for that.
Yeah,
but it all may not matter in the end.
Yeah, it may
to the gold standard where every dollar is backed by an equivalent amount of gold. Although I gotta say, with $31 trillion of national debt, we either need to mine more gold than currently exists for sale, the price of gold would have to skyrocket to
all domestic terrorists.
Oh, so it's
$50,000 an ounce, or the bill is going nowhere. And let's be real, the bill is going nowhere. Now, as far as what happens next, the Goldman Sachs chief economist who coined the term BRICS is calling on BRICS to expand to create a fair multi-currency global system by introducing emerging nations. Even though this might sound counterintuitive for those who want the US dollar to stay in control, as he explains, whenever the Federal Reserve Board has embarked on periods of monetary tightening or the opposite loosening, the consequences on the value of the dollar and the knock-on effects have been dramatic. Or in other words, it takes a significant toll on developing nations anytime the Federal Reserve prints more money, raises interest rates, or lowers interest rates. And sometimes developing nations just can't keep up. Fun fact, but this is also referred to as what's called the dollar milkshake theory, where if other countries begin slowing down relative to the United States, their currencies begin falling in value, making it more expensive to buy goods and services in US dollars during a time where they could least afford it. Or pretty much as demand for US dollars increases, other countries need to print more of their own currency to pay for those dollars. And it's called the milkshake theory because in this scenario, the US would suck up more dollars from around the world, resulting in cascading defaults throughout every other large economy. Although in this case, it's urged that BRICS use their influence.
It's so weird. Like, fucking, okay, you're telling us that China is like keen to assume the problems of being a reserve currency. Like, if... Okay.
The problem with China taking over as the reserve currency is this in the hands of a country like America is not great, but it's not malicious. In the hands of China, it would be heavily malicious.
Also, it's not that it's America, like, you know, if it wasn't for the Marshall Plan and all that socialism, America wouldn't be the capitalist power it was.
On climate finance, healthcare, and trade, while expanding their involvement throughout the International Monetary Fund. But only time is going to tell how this plays out, and I have a feeling they're probably not going to listen. Personally, though, I've said this before, but in terms of the US dollar's dominance, it's unlikely that anything else is going to take its place anytime soon, because currently there's nothing else that comes close. Even throughout global currency trading, the US dollar currently makes up...
Is this the same? I would be surprised if this is the exact same ending on the last video. Like, he just tacked it on this one at the end. Like, it's the exact same cut. Does he change clothes here?
Spend 8 minutes fear-mongering about a U.S. Congresswoman saying XYZ, and then say, hey, guys, it actually doesn't matter. Thank you. Thanks so much.
90% of all transactions. So the idea that BRICS is going to come up with this currency and the whole world is suddenly going to trust it is a broad overreach. And I say this as a person on YouTube who has absolutely no idea what he's talking about because I'm a guy making videos in a half-converted garage. If I'm speaking candidly here, sure, some countries are wary of the US dollar because of sanctions, interest rates, inflation, and a somewhat volatile Federal Reserve. There's also a very, very, very small, almost non-existent chance that the US somehow defaults on their national debt, which has never happened before in history. But if Congress can't agree on a new debt ceiling, then hey, you know what? Maybe there's slightly more than a non-zero chance. On top of that, there's also never been a reserve currency that's lasted more than 110 years. And so far, we're on year up.
You're telling me there's a chance. You're telling me there's
that doesn't mean we're automatically next, barring some severe financial catastrophe. In which case, I would tend to think that watching YouTube videos and investing would be probably the least of your concerns. That's why I believe.
I'm a guy.
Here's the thing. Why not just make a video? Why not just make a video where it's like, that's not what we want. Is it this one? There we go. This one. Why not just make a video where he explains why BRICS is going to fail for 10 minutes?
Because he can't do that.
It would be the same thing. It's the same video, just retitle it.
No, the thing is, you can't stretch that 1 minute in the end to 10. So you have to talk about all the bullshit that everybody else throws out. And then also say, hey, I'm just an idiot in my garage. It's like, okay, dude, be quiet. Like, you don't have to talk if you're an idiot in your garage. You don't have to be an authority on this. Like, fuck.